Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session on July 18th of Quispamsis Council. Residents, staff, councillors, and visitors all enjoyed a wonderful Canada Day celebration in the Arts and Culture Park. Thank you to all staff and friends who contributed to its success, and a special thank you to our host from the group Rock and Roll Cowgirl, Carrie Underhill. Firefly Splash Pad is open for business. And Council had a special meeting last week to pass a bylaw to prevent parking on side streets near the splash pad. There are limited parking spaces over at Firefly Park, so we ask you to park off of Equality Lane so that you have free parking and easy access to the park, and we hope that everyone has fun using the brand new splash pad. Please be mindful of sharing the road with 1 meter between you and a car driving alongside of a cyclist. And we invite you to stay tuned to the website update for news around Quispamsis, including events for New Brunswick Day, which is on August the 7th, the first Monday of August. So welcome. I hope you have a good week coming up and that you find joy in the week. I'm looking now for an approval of the agenda. Councillor Miller, been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Looking for the treaty acknowledgement and moment of reflection by Councillor Donovan, please.
We would like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq people whose ancestors, along with Passamaquoddy tribes, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this moment to pay respect to the elders, past and present, and the descendants of this traditional territory. And may we remind ourselves of the important work we have before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interests of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you. I'm also looking for a disclosure of interest. Seeing there are none. Presentations. This evening we have with us Mr. Phil Willett. He is the CEO of the Fundy Regional Service Commission, and he has a presentation tonight on the regional strategy. Welcome, Mr. Willett, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me here, Your Worship and members of Council. Today I will do my best to cram this into a 10-minute presentation on the first of its kind, a Fundy regional strategy. There's been local government strategies, there's been good efforts on a variety of topics, but this broad-based approach to this strategy is a really impressive one, and I think it's something to celebrate as a region. Next slide. Oh, I think you're a little bit ahead there. If you go back to the start of the presentation. There we go. Yeah, next slide. And you can go to the next slide as well. There. Just to acknowledge that the project did involve quite a bit of engagement, and this was stakeholder-based engagement across the region in order to collect feedback on a lot of these new services that we have. I also want to acknowledge the important vision that was provided by the board of directors, as well as the committees that provided a lot of input into this process. If we go to the next slide. I did want to just point out some of the key themes that came out of this engagement, which was really important. Listen, the province of New Brunswick established these mandates for the Regional Service Commission. You have a lot on your agenda. You don't need to know all of them, but it was a provincial government decision on what they were. We went around and asked these stakeholders, what do you think? What should we be doing with these related mandates? And the story that we received was, Yes, absolutely, you should collaborate. You're not collaborating already? Yes, make this your mandate. Make this more of your business as a region to work together on public safety, on community development, on recreation planning, all those topics. So it's a resounding yes. And that's a really important piece to have, that we weren't really clear of that. We didn't know how the region would respond to this, but stakeholders provide us that feedback. The other one that was received that I think is an important point to make is that there's some really great best practices already in place across the region, and part of the effort that we need to do is to take those best practices and share them across the region so they're not duplicating, and we can improve on efficiency across. Next slide. I'm not going to go through the vision. You've received this package, and I won't go through each one of the visions and the goals of each section, but I will ask you to go to the next slide. And we also have shared values that are established as part of this as well. I'm not going to go through that. Next slide. One thing that we did do is as a board of directors of the FRC and as a council, you probably hear this from your administrative staff often, is that you want to stay at the policy level. Keep up there. We decided not to do that for this. We wanted to share the 77 actions that we identified. And the reason for that is because I think people need to understand where's the tangibility, where's the rubber hitting the road as it relates to the regional strategy and the Regional Service Commission and the work that could happen in the region. So we went ahead and drafted 77 actions, and we asked the community to help us formulate those. And you can see how they're divided up. Again, we're still in a startup type stage, so you'll see a lot of these actions are related to introduce and study and partner versus taking immediate action on something that we're still a little bit learning on where we should go with. So next slide. If you go 2 slides forward and one more, I think that's the one I want. This is the public safety section. Again, I'm not going to go through everything. You have it in your slide deck. There are 3 goals and 12 actions. And one that I did want to identify as a tangible action on an immediate step is one thing that does unite the region are trains. Everybody's a little bit concerned and excited, I guess, at the same time with the amount of train traffic volume that's happening, both in terms of safety as well as logistics. It's a common concern that we've heard across. So we propose that we're going to create a subcommittee of the FRC to tackle this issue and to make sure that we can cooperate as communities with this increased volume that's occurring. The other one in this one is that we've heard that there's a need for enhanced communication between the different public safety organizations in our region. So we're looking for enhanced communications between them when emergencies do arise that require support amongst all the agencies. Next slide. And next slide again. For regional transportation, there's 5 goals in this section as well as 10 actions. And one of the immediate actions that we identified is that each community does their own share the roads type of campaign. And there's a real potential here for efficiency if the FRC becomes involved and helps support those. Instead of each community doing this themselves, we can generate it and create a template that everybody can use and then promote equally. So again, likely or hopefully a cost saving for each one of our local members. One of the bigger moves contemplated in this regional transportation section is a transportation master plan, where we'd bring together all the existing transportation plans and how we're linking up, how they relate. So a massive undertaking to take that on, but one that would really certainly build consistency and synergies across the different local governments. Next slide. And next one as well. This one I'm not going to cover. We have an existing land use service for Fundy St. Martin's and the Fundy Rural District. And it is an area that we have the opportunity for expanding and supporting local governments in a new way. So this is an area that we contemplate in this strategy. Next slide. Community development, if you go to the next slide as well. This is our largest portfolio, if you may, with the most mandates that fall within it, and certainly one of the areas that remain the grayest, if you may. And there are 4 goals and 12 actions in this. One of the more immediate actions that we propose that we make is we just really create an asset map across the region on all these different services that are provided. And the reason for that is that we have a pretty good idea how this works in some of these fields, but we don't know all these different mandates on where it is: poverty reduction, homelessness, especially in the areas outside of St. John. There's less data on what's happening and how those services are being provided to those vulnerable and marginalized communities. When we look back at maybe a big shift that will happen in here, we contemplate having a symposium annually to bring together all our stakeholders in this space across the region to build targets, to set targets, I should say, and evaluate our progress. And hopefully, the objective here is to access more funding from the provincial and federal government, because we're taking a regional approach and we're maximizing the resources that are already in place. So a lot of interest in that kind of shared approach, that collective impact model. We keep going. Regional facilities is another area that is of quite of interest to the region, to the local governments. Here we have 4 goals and 10 actions. If you go to the next slide, one of the more immediate and maybe seems softer, but also something that could have a large impact, is working towards an arts and culture policy for the region. Each community has their own arts and culture programming, but how we do that as a region isn't really defined. And I certainly think that there would be enhanced revenue opportunities, as well as connections between the local governments on how this is rolled out and how this is applicable to the residents across the region. When we look at kind of further out on what we might have as a large impact in this space, I think we do have to look at the governance structure for each one of the existing regional facilities. Right now, each board, there's a board for each one of the 5 regional facilities, and there's some enhancements that could certainly be improved there and streamlining that approach. We keep going here. The next one I'm not going to speak to. We already have an economic development strategy embedded through Envision St. John, so we simply have adopted that. In solid waste, we have identified a variety of goals in there. In solid waste, the challenge is that there's a lot of things that we have not yet defined, including the height of the IA. We're looking to increase the height of the landfill, and that's a major issue. How we will deal with PPP and circular materials is another challenge, as well as recent expectations of new regulations, federal regulations on landfills that will also impact. So there's a variety of things there that we'll know. So one of the things that is contemplated in this section is a strategy for solid waste once we have all that information, which would occur probably in the next 2 years. If we go to the next section. Yeah, so above and beyond that, I've talked about what we would be doing as a commission in the business, but what are we going to do on the business to support all this, these new functions, this new support? And this is really around enabling. So we've identified 14 actions in this section to help build that. One of the most obvious areas is I think the Commission has done a good job at informing mayors of all the communities in our region, as well as the chief administrative officers. But I don't think we've done a successful job at informing local councils and staff at the local level, as well as the community. So there's some more work to do in terms of education and awareness about what the Commission is doing, how it's functioning, and how it brings value. I think there's a little bit more work that's needed there. So you'll see a little bit more of that in this strategy. If you go on to the next slide, I'll just kind of wrap it up here. There is a scorecard that we have to ensure that we're evaluating our success in this new ambitious mandate to work as a region. And if you move on further, no public service presentation is complete without a very detailed and fine color-coordinated action strategy. So this is really to make sure that this is not just another strategy. I know that this might seem boring to many, but this is something that will ensure that we're actually tangibly improving the outcomes that have been identified from the vision, which is at the elected office level, that is the board of the FRC. Go to the next slide. We're almost done here. We have decided not to adopt this regional strategy or seek adoption of this regional strategy right away. What we wanted to do was present it to the board of the Commission and then hold off. Take a month, hear from people. And this is where we're at right now. We're in that stage right now. We've gone to local councils. There's one more after you, City of St. John, next week that we will collect feedback. And we're seeking your feedback. So we know that we might not have this completely right. We're prepared to make some tweaks if need be. And there are still some sections that we're still awaiting, so we know that. And the outcome, I know it says adoption in July, our August 3rd meeting, we'd had to shift the meeting. That's when we'd be seeking adoption. The province has set the deadline for July to adopt this, but they have granted us some wiggle room to make that adoption. So listen, happy to receive your questions or feedback today, but also feel free to send us any feedback that you might have on the strategy once you have time.
Thank you very much, Phil. And certainly, you know, the legislation that came down through the new Governance Act through the province has certainly provided lots for us to do as far as councils are concerned, has provided an entirely new area with the Regional Services Commission to undertake all of these requests that have been legislated to us. So it isn't something that we have a choice on. We've been given this, and our task now is to carry out the work that's involved in this. So I will open up now to questions. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment. I know that you were, there was not a lot of time to do a lot of work. So I really just wanted to congratulate you and everyone involved, as well as Dillon Consulting. I've never seen such a thorough strat plan. And I know you mentioned that the 77 actions usually aren't included. That's the part I loved, because it's not just pie in the sky. You are like setting out very actionable, tangible things. So kudos. I think it's really, really good. I mean, again, I'd have to go through it with fine-tooth comb, because I'm sure there's other things that can be added. But I think as an initial starting off, I think your approach and the report that you presented to us, again, it gives me great confidence, because there is strategies in there to kind of measure and make sure we're moving forward. So I just wanted to say kudos.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Deputy Mayor Squire, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Phil, for your presentation. It's been a lot of work, I know. I have a couple questions, if the mayor will permit me. Number one is, I noticed in the strat plan, and maybe it's not common, but whether or not it can be added or a footnote, is money. Where's the money? There's a lot of action plans in here, a lot of things to be done, and there's only us, the taxpayers. Quispamsis, we're already paying, I don't know how many extra dollars we are for Regional Services Commission, and plus the facilities. So I really, and I think all the councillors I speak for that would want to know exactly what are we talking about financially, because this would be astronomical to implement. And I realize that it might be a 2, 3, 5, 10 short term, medium term, a long time, but just so long term, just so that we have an idea of what are we talking about here to create something like this, so that we can get our ducks in a row when we need to talk to the province as to what money will be transferred to us in order for us to implement some of these. So I'll let you answer that one first.
It's a great question. I'm happy you've asked it, because I think this is on the minds of many councils across the region. And the way I'd answer it first is to say that we've adopted a budget preparation document. And I should say that the adoption of this strategy, if the FRC board were to adopt it, it does not commit them to the expenditures related to it. That happens at a budget process. So they can say we're not ready for it. But we did adopt a budget development criteria for 2024. In the spirit of that, we're talking about incrementality. We just received, as you know, Deputy Mayor Schreier, this mandate of community development. So for us to come here and say we're going to open up 3 new homelessness shelters next year, and we're going to adopt a major conference for us to improve, and I think everybody would say, why aren't we walking before we run here? And so that's part of the approach. Absolutely, I think there is going to be some resource demands. How we perform those resources, I think we have to look at partnership to achieve that with the province, with the community, with existing resources of the FRC, and the potential for additional costs on the FRC as an option. But I will share with you how the province is supporting, how it's chosen to support the FRC through this, which is an access of a fund. So they've introduced a regional services support fund. And this fund is comprised of funding that would originate from the community grant and equalization program from the provincial government. And essentially what they'll do is if your strategy, if there's something in your strategy that you're looking for money for, it will finance up to 50% of it. But you have to support the other 50% of it. They've given a cap for each region. And for our region, it's $1.4 million. So our exercise will be to define how can we leverage those funds with recurring and new costs related to our new mandate to lessen the burden of these expenses on our membership. So one would be the regional facilities. That's certainly an area that we would want to have access to. But there's others too. The mandate of economic development falls under that, all the community development pieces. And that's above and beyond the stackability to other provincial funding. So for example, right now we're seeking 40-cent dollars on all regional facilities capital costs. So that, again, reduces the burden. So I think our exercise is really to leverage that amount of money. And when the board met at the start of the year, they said, and it's similar to the tone that Mayor O'Hara just shared, which is how this happened and why this happened, there's still a lot of questions. We might not have done it this way, but now this mandate is real. It's happened. And this year, we're not going to sit here and kick and punch back and say, we don't want to do this. We want to be a commission that maximizes its ability to leverage the dollars that are available to bring back to the residents that are represented through each local government. So that commitment's there. I think that mandate will continue. And I'll just share one other is that it's not just about accessing money, it's also about advocating when things aren't right. And I've seen that with this board this year saying, yes, let's access the money that we can access, but also we're in the middle of a transition. So the province is likely looking for us to give feedback, and we have been willing to provide that feedback to say, we don't think you have it quite right yet. We think there's still adaptations needed. So that will be ongoing as we go. So maybe a long-winded answer, but hopefully I answered it.
Your Worship, just a point of privilege. Can we ensure the audio system is working? Because I don't think, I don't hear anything from the Deputy Mayor through the speakers, nor did I when Councillor Luck just spoke, and I don't believe Mr. Willett is coming through the audio system. So I just
Can
wonder
we
if there's
check
any
with
way to
the
ensure
audio?
that.
It looks good. Could you turn the volume up?
Can you hear us? I'm not, I mean.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
but not through the mic
People
though.
can hear me from the next town. But, you know, I just
But
tap on your microphone and see if you get any. Okay. Thank you. Very good.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to sort of where the community development that you've already said is huge. I mean, we've been tackling these problems for a long, long time. So I just wanted you to, so the example you gave about tapping into a fund, which would be 50% funding. So when we talk about housing and affordable housing and homelessness and the whole scope of housing, regardless of whether it's the missing middle or it's, the affordable housing. So is that an example of an asset mapping we would do? Would we look at, Quispamsis does not have an up-to-date stats on all our housing and what our needs are. Is that something that asset mapping would do, or are you talking about physical assets?
It's a good question. One of the challenges we have is the way this mandate was introduced is that it wasn't to replace local government efforts. So if your local government was going to do an asset map of housing, we don't want to duplicate that. We don't want to support And I don't think there'd be funding from the province from this fund for a local initiative. But we do understand that some local governments have done it, some have not, some have consolidated it. So how could we bring this all together? Is there synergies? And for the ones that aren't, is there a synergy of creating one firm or one consultant to help 3 different communities do it? So this is the type of thing that I think when you bring regional collaboration together, there is savings, there is an opportunity. So for the asset map, it would be around what's available in affordable housing, and it doesn't have to stick to affordable housing, it could be all housing types, and where there's gaps and where it's going. So we have examples of that that's already in place with some other communities, so we can learn from that, but we could also build a regional strategy and identify how this could be funded more efficiently if we all work together. And then building what capacities and themes are there across each local government. So instead of, a good example is let's just say this didn't exist, this regional mandate didn't exist. The town of Quispamsis proceeded with a housing strategy. And you said the outcome of that is that we need to hire a new planner to support that. But let's just say every community did that. Now you're hiring 7 new planners for housing strategy implementation across the region. Is that needed for a population of 130,000 people? It's a good question. Is there synergies between doing that? Is there cost savings that could be achieved? I think the answer is emphatically yes, there probably is. But at the current time, we're not sharing that information as readily. So I think what we would see ourselves as is a convener. Let's bring this information together and see where there's opportunities for exchange, savings, and best practice.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Schreier. Any other questions for Mr. Ouellette? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Ouellette. I guess the thing that's still concerning me about the whole commission is you've got lots of action plans, but you've got too many to start with. You need to narrow those down to start with. You've got 77, way too many. Every one I look through for all our different mandates, it asks for studies. We've done many, many studies here, and they're not cheap. They're $50,000, $100,000. So kind of to Deputy Mayor, what's all this going to cost us? And you kind of alluded to it. Quispamsis, I don't know what the other communities have been doing. We've done a lot of studies, whether it's on master asset management, our facilities, do we have enough rinks, do we have enough ball fields? So I don't think we should be paying for somebody else that didn't do it if you want to do a regional one. That's just me. I also see that this commission has, and no fault to your own, is got a lot of really strict timelines and guidelines, so I look, we're adding 11 people to a water committee from Quispamsis. Just Quispamsis, 11 people. So I'm also trying to think, what kind of committee do you have with 40, 50 people? And how efficient is that? That's just a comment from being in meetings. So we have a lot of our team here, not only has our money or the funding requested significantly increased, and my guess it's going to increase again. Well, I'll wait and see the budget, but it increased a heck of a lot in the last one. We have a lot of extra layers on here, but we're doing a lot of duplicate stuff. So you're taking our staff and they're experts in certain areas. They now have multiple meetings, multiple other deadlines. And again, the water one I'm just looking has 11 people, over half of them staff. So what does St. John and Ross have? So I'm a skeptic at the efficiency of the whole process yet. I see a lot of time investment. I see a lot of duplicate. I know our mayor and most of our staff members keep getting asked to do more. So you got a lot of committees and you got 77 action plans. You have too many action plans, I think. And it's just really confusing to me when I look at all the costs. And I'm confused on different things like land use planning, like how does a regional, talk to Quispamsis, what we put for land for public purpose and things like that. So I guess the proof will be in the pudding, but as a taxpayer as well, I mean, it's great to get government money or federal money, but that's also taxpayer money. So nothing's free. The province is funding the RSCs a bit more than they normally would in the startup. They have definite dates that they drop off. How long is that going to go? It's still our money at the end. So it's just, you've got a big bundle here. It's a pretty big bundle. So again, it comes back, what's the cost? What's all this going to cost us? Mm-hmm. We have, again, everyone has a study. So where's it going to go and how much time and effort? And when we have guidelines, and I know from different correspondence I've seen, things come in and we got to respond by 1 week or 2 weeks. That's not acceptable in the real world. Like, I don't care what the government said. We've got to do things right. Rushing things, perfection takes time, and doing things right takes time. You just don't rush it to meet a deadline. And I think we've been in this ball too fast. We need to slow down and do whatever's right. And again, I'm just concerned with the duplication of work. So I'm confused how this is going to work, because right now I'm a skeptic, as you already know. But
I may offer a little bit of feedback. If I'm happy you've shared that feedback, Councillor Miller. I think it's important to acknowledge. I think where the easiest way of approaching this is that regional collaboration works. It's worked in BC, it's worked in other regions, and for a region of 130,000 people, for example, in public safety, we have 35 different public safety organizations in our region. And is there an opportunity to work better together? Yes. Is there going to be eventual cost savings for us to figure out how we can work more closely together? Yes, there will. Not trying and not really giving it. And I think we do have, and the board's acknowledged this is not coming from me, the board's acknowledged that we have trust issues as a region. We've got to build those bridges across these communities to come forward with these efficiencies and with enhanced service. So a lot of this stuff is happening at the local government, and it might need to happen as a region. And that's the feedback that I leave every local government with is, you don't need to change the way you're doing business, but you should think about when you're working on something, and think about, could this be regional or should it be regional? Am I guessing that every other local government is going to be doing this exact same thing in the coming year or two? Is there an efficiency for us to do this as a region? Saving 30, 40% on consultants? Probably yes. And I think the Regional Service Commission is going to invite that conversation and push that conversation. But the first step of it is trust, and the easiest way to build trust is to understand the situation. So that's why we're going to studies and informing. A good way to destroy that trust would be to take action and do duplication or stepping on people's toes. So that's why we've taken a more cautious approach. And I think you'll see that we've always maintained a very efficient and cost-conscious approach to the commission. I think that will be maintained within the mandate that we've received. So I think it's worth trying. The feedback from the board is committed to it is worth an attempt to make this work. And from other commissions across the province, they're also seeing some of the benefits of that. So, I'll hope I come back here in a year or 2 years and you say, well, darn it, you were right. We are seeing some improvements here. And I think that this plan will bring us closer to that, to what I think you're looking for as cost savings and improvements in the outcomes, not only for Quispamsis, but for the entire region.
Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is this on? How would you know? I think that, thank you, Your Worship. I think you're an excellent representative for the spirit of this, Mr. Lett, for sure. I can certainly say that the speed with which much of this has been sort of stood up, and serving as the vice chair of the Regional Transportation Committee, I have been party to that sort of what I would have heretofore kind of called like breakneck speed, virtually, that we would develop a strategic plan, begin that process the first day I meet my counterparts on that committee. And as has been said, alluded to, having been given the opportunity to kind of, give a bit of feedback on what we think of the idea of this coming down the pipe to us, but ultimately having no choice in the matter as to the sort of restructuring of governance in the province. All of that goes to the challenge of now trying to work together, I think. And I believe the province has fundamentally failed to bring municipalities along in the best possible way. Now, that being said, again, working on the Regional Transportation Committee, I have enjoyed thus far the chance to kind of build comedy with counterparts from other municipalities and areas, around the region. And I certainly think that the 5 goals within the mandate of our committee are achievable, depending on how I look at them. But I have certainly had to adjust, I'll just say personally, my outlook on what getting wins on the board is going to look like, probably. And it tends to be, like right now, I feel as though even as we're about to ratify a strategic plan and the goals and so on that have been put before us, it feels a little nebulous still for me. And for me, the challenge now is to try to, figure out, as you say, I work, trying to work here with transportation issues in our town, and I will try to ask myself, as you point out, as you suggest, is this something that could be a solution across the region? Dial-a-ride is probably a good example of that. For example, I was just today looking that over, even as we're discussing some ideas, what we can do here in our town, and so I just want to say that I appreciate that it's not. I don't find it to be particularly, sort of round peg and round hole, the way this is all coming together. But I do appreciate the spirit of it, and I'm hopeful for being able to accomplish some things, practical things that really do improve the situation down the line. I mean, when you mention about could we possibly save some money on studies by virtue of regions, a region doing a study collaboratively as opposed to on their own? Well, yes and no. I mean, I think there are myriad things you could point at and say that, what the water needs are in the rural kind of region of Fundy are not applicable to the municipal water offerings that we have to offer here to advance commercial and multi-residential needs and increasing our tax base and all that sort of thing. It's moot in one sense, Now, in another way, if it improves life, quality of life, and likelihood of population growth and economic growth for the entire region, well, then sure, there you go. If you go up to 50,000 feet, then sure, there's benefit to that overall. But it feels disparate a lot of the time to me, and so I'm working to try to, again, working on one of the committees, So I'm not an outside observer really. I'm working to try to see how I can sort of, close that circle as I'm working on these things. So thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And again, just to summarize, I guess, some of the things that Phil has said. In the past, before we began all of this change, we had economic development, regional facilities, and solid waste that as a community we would have had our, we would have been asked for support in those. Since then, since this new mandate, we've also added public safety, planning, community development, and transportation. So the scope of what every community in the region is doing has broadened. And with that comes change, and with it comes cost, and hopefully eventually efficiencies. So we understand, as chair of the RSC, we understand these questions because, believe me, we've pounded them out many, many times over the past year. And we are legislated and, to fulfill these responsibilities. And that's the effort that we're putting forward. And we're hoping that we do make headway for everyone, for everyone's benefit. So, Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. I think the whole document, 26 pages, is overwhelming. I don't know how we can physically, with the manpower, and I'm talking staff and council, address all of these issues. You're talking about 77 strategies, and most of them all require studies to be done, which even to have representation on the study committee is going to take manpower. I don't know I'm curious whether this the format of this presentation, is this what is being developed and proposed to every other regional service commission?
Through your worship to Councillor Olson, I think one of the big differences might be that we've provided the actions. So I think this is part of the challenge you're facing, is that we'd like to keep it at the policy level. We could have just shared the goals and the vision, the values, but we thought it was important to share those actions to give an idea of the types of projects. Now, those have to be adopted by a budgetary process of the FRC, and that will happen on the 24th of August. And then there'll be a 45-day review period, which this council will have an opportunity to provide feedback on. So ultimately, it's at that stage that each one of these actions, 77 actions, are divided between 5 different years. And it'll be at that time to say, what type of resources do we need for it? Is it a reasonable ask? And is this the right thing to do? So there could be some tweaks there. The only other thing I'd add is I wanted to make this comment and I didn't know when, and I think it's the right time, is and I heard it earlier from Councillor Miller around just the amount of time that this has taken on everybody. And I think it is something that I can't solve. It's true. The time that I take from your mayor with the commission business, it is a piece of work. It's not no work, it is extra work. And the CAOs as well. CAOs are connect with the FRC regularly. But what I'm seeing is a shift. And the shift is that some groups are starting to see the benefit of it. And it's not going to be necessarily more work, it's work that people wanted to do. So when I bring together the fire chiefs and the police chiefs of the region, they've been wanting to do this. They want to meet together. And I think you're going to see some sweat equity from that exercise. They're going to want to offer more. And let me join that committee. Let me help you out with that. So I think you're going to find that. And I'm starting to see that with the CAOs too, who I bring agendas, but now they're bringing agendas to me. I'd like to discuss this as a region. So it's not just the commission setting that agenda. So, are we there on every area? No, we have a lot more work to do. But I think who does the work and how it's done is not necessarily just more money at the end of the day. And I don't think that would pass anyway. I don't think if I came to the board and said I want everything in this plan funded entirely through increased fees, it wouldn't pass. So I think we're already there. But as we grow, as we build momentum, I think there'll be more ability. And listen, if we've got this wrong, we do this for a year or two, right in the strategy it says after 2 years, we're going to take stock and we will make adjustments if we need to make adjustments if we've gotten this wrong and it's too ambitious. Right now, with some tinkering here and some adjustments, I think we will achieve the majority of this. If we will report on our work plan this year, and we had 56 items in our work plan for this year, and we're halfway through the year, and with the staff that we have and the limited resources that we have in the small team, we're about halfway through. So I think the efficiency of the FRC in the smaller scale, as well as leveraging the support that we can access when we do, you can get quite a bit accomplished in a pretty quick period of time.
Well, I wish I shared your enthusiasm because I'm usually not a negative person, but I'm overwhelmed. I'll say that word again. I think that pretty well defines my thoughts of this whole exercise. And I know that our worship as chair, and she works day and night at all of this stuff, and I'm not sure that she signed up for this when she ran for the mayor's job. We have an exciting community with a lot of demands of its own. We're 19,000 and growing, and I just don't know how this is all going to be physically achieved, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments for Mr. Roulette? And a motion forward, please, or resolution. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yes, I'd like to move to thank you, Mr. Phil Ouellette, for your information on the presentation of the regional strategy in the Funday Regional Service Commission. Thanks so much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer and seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Willett, for your time this evening and for the work that you've accomplished and all the effort that you've put forth in this. It's certainly appreciated by all the municipalities. Have a good evening. Thank you. Going on to item number 6, public hearings, there are none. Minutes of the previous meeting. Looking for a motion, please. Councillor Miller.
Move the minutes be approved as prepared.
It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question. Seeing there are none, please vote now. Oops. Motion carried 7-0. Item number B, special meeting. Looking for a motion, please. Councillor Olson.
Yes, I'd move minutes of the July 7th, 2023 special meeting giving third and final reading to traffic bylaw amendment numbers 27-35, an amendment to create a no parking zone on Firefly Crescent and Lake Road be approved as prepared.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question. Seeing there are none, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 8, unfinished business. There isn't any. Correspondence, town committee appointments, reappointments, recommendations, and nominating committee. Councillor Olson.
Yes, I'd move council endorse the nominating committee's recommended appointments and reappointments as outlined in the committee listing dated June 23rd and June 2023 and highlighted in yellow.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. An observation, if I may. A while back, council approved the creation of a housing committee, and I'm noticing in here that it says Deputy Mayor Schreier is serving on the Fundy Regional Service Community Development Committee, and they're reviewing the housing data for the greater St. John region. So I'm just wondering if the housing committee for the town is still happening, or because it just seems like it has sort of fallen off the rails, in my opinion. But I'm just curious if I could have a little bit of clarity, please.
Thank you. I believe would you like to speak to that, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you for the question, and you can add on, Your Worship, if you want to. So if you notice tonight, one of the questions I asked was about the housing, and because we were hoping that would be one of the categories that we could collaborate on and possibly receive funding from the Regional Service Commission. And I sort of got the answer tonight that wouldn't happen as far as money goes. But directly what I did hear was if you put your energies together, Quispamsis, Rossay, St. Martin's, and the rural district, if we could all come together and do something like that. And it was felt that, we have to have the data to start somewhere. And until we have the data, we're sort of flying in the wind. We're not sure exactly what it is that Quispamsis needs in housing. You can hear a lot of, we do need this or we do need that, but let's get the data that supports that. So I'm sorry that we don't have the committee struck, but that's what the holdup was, to see if we could get it, any funding for it. Now, Her Worship could confirm with Mr. Ouellette tomorrow if that's the case. What I heard tonight was that there won't be funding for that or a chance of getting funding. We don't want to hold it up any longer. It's been, to your point, it's been quite a while now. So let's get the ball rolling. So that would be the next step, to approach the other communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, and to answer your question, it hadn't fallen off the rails. It was a case of when we try to look at what the mandate has been, we want to work as regionally and collaboratively as possible. And yes, it's true that we talked about doing an asset, or I guess the needs asset needs for housing in this area. But then when this all came about, we looked at the collaboration within the region because everybody has to do the same thing. So we may not be moving quickly enough because we know that housing is a huge need throughout the entire country. So I will check tomorrow. If it's a case that we can still do a study to look at, because I know I spoke with the mayor of Rossi as well, and we talked about doing one within our two communities. And if we can tap into some of the available funds, then we'll certainly look into that and investigate that and perhaps get that that going. But one of the things that I know Mr. Willett is trying to avoid is duplication of the work. If we pay for it and then it's paid for on a regional basis, it wouldn't make much sense. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to build on, I guess, that question just as you were speaking. I know it wouldn't give us everything that we're looking for in a study, but I think the census data, it can be broken down by postal code, so it would give us a really good sense. So when, I guess when we're ready as a town to kind of start looking for data, I think that that would be a really great source of information because you can break it down and we'll have a sense of even, people that are living beyond, underneath the poverty line, number of people per home, all that stuff is in the census and it is broken down by postal code. So that's a resource that we may want to tap into.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this discussion highlights the recent discussion I had on the Regional Service Commissions, that anything we do is going to require a committee of some sort. And when we suggest that maybe staff help, and I agree with Councillor Luck, we haven't appointed them to do this work along with everything else that they're doing. So, we've got to come up with some guideline or some plan on how much we want to be done, how we're going to do it, who would be involved, and then when we have those parameters all in place, then we can see how if staff can take it on, and just another issue that we have to deal with.
Yep. Thank you for that, Councillor Olson, and certainly it is. It's a huge undertaking. It's a huge mandate, and certainly Mr. Willett is putting his best foot forward to try and live up to the requests of the provincial government in covering all of these topics. What is lacking, as Councillor Olson pointed out earlier, is the fact that there's going to be a need for additional staff to do some of this work, plain and simple. And to what Councillor Miller had said, there is going to be more money involved. At some point going down the road, we can't do more with less, or we can't do more with the status quo. As I said earlier, we've taken on 4 new entities in planning, public safety, the other ones that I had mentioned, transportation and community development. And, those are absolutely unbearably huge to take on. We are trying to define what transportation looks like within our community, and yet we are looking at that on a regional basis, as well as looking at community development and housing on a regional basis. So back to what Councillor Donovan had said, we had a plan moving forward, and we had to park it because we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing and using our resources wisely. So, Councillor Olson.
No,
No? Okay. All right, I believe that there's a motion on the table. It was moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Thompson on the question. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item 9B, rezoning application, JP Custom Homes Limited, 45 Old Coach Road, R1 to R2, proposed development of 3 new fourplexes and 2 new triplexes. Peter Donovan, President, JP Custom Homes, in attendance. Welcome to the podium. Good evening.
And as you mentioned, JP Custom Homes. We're proposing to rezone 45 Old Coach Road and 1 Hovey Road. As you mentioned, fourplexes and triplexes, a total of 17 units. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that council may have about the application.
Thank you. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just make the motion to get things started. I would move council refer the proposed zoning bylaw amendment from JP Custom Homes Limited to the Planning Advisory Committee to review and provide comment to the council and direct the town clerk to set and advertise a public hearing date for September 19th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Luck. On the question. Councillor Olson? No? Okay. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Donovan, I was looking at the map on here, and I seem to have gotten out of it. Just a sec. No, that's not it. I'm sorry. Oh, there's the map there. But the one that I had in my kit here, it shows property owners. Is that an old? I'm sorry. I clicked on something and I'm out of the. What number is this that we're on?
It is not
9B. 9B? 9B. Okay, sorry about that. It was a map that's in our kit, and it looks like it's a fairly old map. And I'm wondering why we would have that in here. It's one's Hovey Road subdivision. That map, it shows the corner lot of Hovey Road and the Old Coach Road, and it shows the owners of the properties. Is that an old map?
Yeah, so the application process, I was asked to collect any survey information that I could find on the existing property. So I searched that on Service New Brunswick, the Planet Service. So that was a survey that was done at whatever date it says on there. When that was subdivided. So it predates anything that we're doing. It just provides information about the property.
Okay, so but the lot sizes or the PID numbers and everything remain the same as what's on that map?
That's right.
And the elevations and everything, there's nothing, like the elevations on here, are they the new elevations or what they were back in?
So at this date, no elevations have been proposed whatsoever.
Okay.
I believe as we get further into the process, we would do like our full drainage plans and whatnot for the properties for the proposal. Right now we're kind of at a high level, what will fit, what will meet the zoning requirements and whatnot. A detailed design on either of the properties hasn't been done yet.
Okay. And just one last question. You will hook up to the water?
Yes.
Hook up to the water system?
Yeah, water and sewer.
Water and sewer. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Donovan, for your presentation. If this was approved, what are your plans for construction?
We would move forward in a reasonably timely manner. It just depends how quickly we can do that. In terms of constructability on our end, we would, I mean, when I first met with Jennifer and Dwight, we talked about potentially beginning this fall or next spring. At what stage we made it through rezoning, and then had our ducks in a row in terms of a development agreement, and where we are this year, if that's still possible, or if it pushes it into a spring thing. But we would move forward fairly quickly on this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Motion's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Luck. On the question, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you for my indulgence. I just have one more question. Have you any plans to do any affordable housing within those units? Have you applied to the provincial government?
We have not at this stage. Currently, sort of in the land use stage, if it's possible, we would like to. The overall scheme of the project, the units are fairly small. They're around 700 square feet. Our goal within that would be able to provide as many people housing as we possibly could. Whether it's younger people, older people, or anyone in between, we want to make them as affordable as possible, whether they're designated affordable or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On the question, if there are no further questions, please vote now on the motion. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks so much.
Item 9C. A request for an amendment, and it is going to be referred to another time. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I would move the council defer this item to the August 15th regular meeting pending receipt of the town solicitor's advice on best practices to proceed with application concerning application concerning 33 Pettingill Road.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, seeing there are none, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item 9D, request from Kennebecasis Public Library, additional operational funding and staff report from acting CAO, Mr. Aaron Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, would you like to comment, or?
Thank you, Your Worship. As Council saw in the kit, this request came directly from the library's board. Costs have escalated, as we are all well aware. Things are more than we had budgeted for, and some of their contracts came up in the spring, and they're just looking to cover those additional costs that were unexpected. And Rosse Council approved their share of the funding at their regular meeting last week, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Bigger.
Yes, Your Worship, I would move the council approve the Kennebecasis Public Library Board's request for additional funding in the amount of $7,716.50, which will come from the 2023 general operating surplus, if any, or the general operating reserve if no surplus is available.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, Councillor Luck.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm just wondering in the document where it shows Town of Quispamsis requested funding $7,716 and Town of Rosse is $4,933. Is that because of the population factor?
It's based on population, so it's about 60 to 40, 60%, 40%.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have another question, Deputy Mayor? Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item 10, bylaws. 10A, Review of bylaw number 026, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting licensing of taxicabs, re-ability to use licenses from other jurisdictions to offer taxicab services. And you had a report in that from, I believe, from our chief of police. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, and I appreciate that this review has been brought forward. It's an important topic that I'm sure that's going to lead to some great discussions. I don't feel like I have to remind everybody, that this town is growing really fast, and with that growth comes a need for a stronger transportation infrastructure. I can't begin to tell you all how many times I've been out in the evenings and have heard we can't get around town, or we might have to walk home, or there are no cabs available. It's certainly been a lot, and further, it's upsetting to know that our town is severely limited to only those who have a personal mode of transportation. I think it holds us back on so many levels. While I can certainly understand, after being on council for almost 2 years, that we are sometimes limited to what we can provide due to our financial constraints, what we do have the power to do as elected officials is modify bylaws to better serve the needs of our town and residents. What I see before us is a problem, and in my opinion, we have the tools and ability to fix it. In our ride-sharing bylaw, we specifically allow these ride-share drivers to come into our town and operate within it, so long as they're licensed and in good standing within other municipalities. Yet when it comes to taxis, a taxi can pick myself up in Uptown St. John and bring me all the way back out to my home in Quispamsis, but they must go right back into the city after dropping me off. If, when I arrive home, someone in my household wanted to go down to, say, Amici's, for example, that taxi is forbidden from accepting that fare, and that right there is a barrier, and I think it's a foolish one. Could taxis from other municipalities swipe some business from KV-based taxi companies? Sure. However, if this is a point of the argument that's holding this up, one could also argue that every one of us had already gotten that ball rolling by approving unanimously the rideshare bylaw back in August. While there was also no definitive data suggesting that people in the community are driving while intoxicated due to a lack of late-night transportation options, it doesn't take much to draw the correlation between the two. It is certainly possible that this could be a contributing factor. I am only trying to find better solutions for our residents, and I believe fixing this broken piece would do just that. I don't want to see this shelved away and received and filed, and I would really like to see some further action taking on this bylaw. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Donovan. You mentioned a lot of the points that I wanted to bring up, but I guess when I received the staff report, I was the one that brought this motion forward in January. After speaking to the chief of police in regards to, I guess what prompted me to bring this forward was hearing from residents about the issue, and then ironically, within the same week, hearing about drinking and driving, and then speaking to the chief to say, what do you think? Is it feasible? And I'm not surprised they don't have the data because it's not something that they're looking for. But with that said, when I read the staff report, I looked at this issue, I guess from two different perspectives. One is we are part of a bigger region, as we heard earlier today. So I didn't pay Mr. Ouellette to say that, but it seemed like it's actually quite interesting that, he's already kind of given us that kind of food for thought. And I also looked at it from working together to enhance services for our residents. So I kind of feel like this issue wasn't about proving my theory right or wrong about if people are drinking and driving because taxi services are limited, but rather to address the current limitations our Quispamsis residents experience regarding having limited access to accessible, dependable, reliable modes of transportation to support their day-to-day activities within our town. So currently, as Councillor Donovan had mentioned, a St. John taxi driver can pick you up in Quispamsis, but they have to bring you back to St. John. They can't bring you to Shoppers, Sobeys, Kent's. They can't bring you to another residence in St. John. Again, because I know that the police don't have hard facts, but some of the examples that I wanted to share that I have heard from residents, one of the ones that prompted me was a resident shared their story of having a get-together at their home in Quispamsis over the holidays and wanting to be a responsible adult because a number of people would be drinking. And they wanted to organize taxis to get them home safely. and they were organizing it. And a lot of the people that were coming to the party, because it was a work event, were from St. John. And when they tried to arrange it, basically the St. John cab, that they basically wanted them just to keep, pay for them for so many hours to just keep going in a circle, would take people from Quispam and bring them to St. John, but they wouldn't take Quispamsis residents back to their home in Quispam, which, is a huge barrier. So that was one example. Another example was a resident shared with me that they were in Uptown St. John and taxis will actually refuse to drive them back home. And I don't blame them, because what happens is that they get here and there's no, they have to turn around and go back. They can't even stay and kind of pick up a few fares while they're here. Another example is a resident admitted to me in confidence that they were out in Quispamsis at a local bar and they waited so long for a cab, they just drove home after sobering up. So these are the things that are really happening in our town. And then another example is even last year with the KV Jazz and Blues Festival, one of the organizers asked the police to be lenient on our bylaw because, again, even with big events, which I think will continue to happen as we're a growing town, those events don't have the infrastructure to ensure that people have access to transportation when they're out having fun and partying without relying on other taxi services. So I do think this is an issue that needs to be addressed. I agree with Councillor Donovan. I don't think it should be filed and received. If there is a concern about, and I know in the staff report it mentioned a concern about having outside jurisdiction regulating our taxis, one of the suggestions could be, in, again, the spirit of regionalization, is the suggestion is have our bylaw expand to only allow for taxis within the Fundy region to keep a better handle on the regulations and licensing. Our bylaw could read, if a taxi company for hire is licensed by any of the Fundy region municipalities and is licensed and is in good standing, they are authorized to carry on business within the territory limits of the town of Quispamsis. And this wording is very similar to our current rideshare bylaw, but that's actually even more extensive, where it allows anybody in New Brunswick to be certified. So another thing is what I've been told is actually the licensing in St. John is actually more stringent. So I don't think we'd be losing anything if we did allow. And also, if we are concerned about the licensing, I think then we should be addressing the fact that these same taxis that we're concerned about licensing are already coming into our town and picking up residents and bringing them out of our town and dropping them off in our town from St. John. So again, if that really is a concern, then it should be a concern and we should be addressing it. So I guess I'll leave it with this. Most of us attended the conference last year for the municipalities conference, and we heard from a gentleman named Doug Griffith. Yeah, I think it's Griffiths. Anyway, he talked about the 13 ways to kill your community, and in one of the 13 ways he talked about was don't attract business. So I don't think we should be scared off of a little competition. Based on this gentleman's analysis, competition is a good thing, and it helps all businesses thrive. So I would ask my fellow councillors to reject the motion to receive and file. I guess there is no motion on the floor, but I do think that we need to consider updating our taxi bylaw to address the limitations that I've identified by allowing even Fendi municipality taxis or licensed taxis to provide local transportation options to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess irrespective of the police commissioner's, police chief's comments, is I don't think we should slow down taxis here, whether they want to come back and forth. So I'd like to make a motion that we send this to our transportation committee and also Mr. Bigger to bring this to the regional transportation committee as well, because I think irrespective of the comments I made earlier, this is something that regionally would work, because to try to get a cab here is impossible, pretty hard. Well, there's like 2 or 3 cabs. So I think we got to figure out a way to get that, and whether that's regional. I'll Miss Snow, I know you type better than me. So basically I would move that we send this discussion to the Transportation Committee, our local, but also to the Regional Transportation Committee. If it's okay if I put them both in one motion. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Just on the question, thank you, Your Worship. I believe it does merit more discussion on how we can allow people to move around within our community. I know that I've experienced, waiting for hours and, oh geez, sometimes you don't go out because you say, well, I won't be able to get home, so I opt to stay home or, so anyway, I agree. I think it, needs a merit, has the merit for more discussion, and I support that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to point out that these were, my name's on the staff report, those were conversations that I had with the police department and with the town solicitor. And I think the motion that Councillor Miller has put forward is an important one. And I was going to suggest that, if it went to the Regional Transportation Committee that Councillor Bigger is a member of, I think that's important, because I think if we were to move forward as a municipality and allow St. John cabs to come in here and move around with that scenario of they're dropping somebody off and someone in that house wants to go somewhere else within Quispamsis, I think it would be inherently unfair to allow that to happen to our local business, because they are not afforded that same courtesy in St. John. So I think from a regional perspective, this would be an ideal collaboration to bring everybody together and say, hey, it makes sense that if St. John cabs are coming out here and there's a quick fix almost on their own way back to the highway sort of thing as they head back to St. John, and the quid pro quo with the Quispamsis cabs as well, because I think that's important. I think just in terms of comparing it to the ride share, I think that's a little different in terms of there are no ride shares happening in New Brunswick yet. So, and I suspect if that ever comes to pass, we would probably look at that bylaw once again to maybe tighten it up. But there was a push from the regional perspective, from the Regional Growth Agency and Vision for the municipalities to move forward with that bylaw. Fredericton, I think, is now into their 4th year, perhaps their 5th with a ride-sharing bylaw, and it still hasn't happened. And sort of anecdotally, we hear that that's tied up in the provincial legislature in terms of insurance and other issues that are afforded to that. So, ultimately, when ride-sharing begins, that'll sort of be all on the same page that it will start, and St. John will likely be the ones that do the licensing. But I do think it's important that everyone's on the same playing field, so that if this were to apply to Quispam or to St. John cabs coming out here, that the reverse would also be an acceptable alternative, that Quispamsis cabs would be afforded the same consideration in the city, Your Worship. So I think the motion is fantastic, and I think that's ties in nicely with Mr. Ouellette's presentation from earlier this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Moving on to Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, actually, the CAO expressed exactly what I was thinking, that we don't, as of yet, have any sense of reciprocity with this kind of idea. And I came into this meeting not really a fan of the idea of relaxing this bylaw insofar as it would, as the CAO points out, perhaps create an advantage on one side that isn't reciprocated all around. We have a regional transportation meeting this Friday at 1 o'clock, and so I'll be certainly glad to bring that forward and begin some discussion as far as that goes. I take Councillor Luck's point about the speaker from UMNB's conference last fall, speaking about if you want, one of the ways to kill your community is to not attract business. A taxi company that's not based in Quispamsis, I'm not sure is actually attracting business insofar as it doesn't actually add to the bottom line of anybody in our town. But I think that that's what has caught my interest, and as far as that goes, my support for this idea is, yeah, if we can establish a regional kind of reciprocity, then I think that I do think it's, practically speaking, there's lots of anecdotes about people struggling to get a taxi ride home when needed and so on, and to the end of trying to expand, not contract or restrict transportation opportunities, in a region like ours where we don't have a 40-foot bus driving around town all day long, then I think it's a perfectly fine idea. I just would want to, we haven't, I think that moving it to our transportation committee for further discussion might necessitate engaging with our local taxi vendors and asking as a stakeholder what their opinion is on the matter. You know, for example, what interest level is there already? Is there actually genuinely an interest level in the situation as outlined by a couple of the councillors here about a St. John cabbie bringing someone out here and then being prohibited from picking up another fare out here to another Quispam or KV, whatever location? Is that something that's actually even of interest to people, the cabbies from St. John? I mean, it's a reason to not pick you up and bring you all the way out here, but would they actually linger here, or would they say to themselves, all the action's back in the city, I'm going back there? I don't know, but we have, I used to work for a boss who said, I need facts, not stories. And so I think that it would be important for us to further to the discussion and get a bit more data, you know. Probably will support, I think, what our gut sort of feeling is here, but we don't really have, as I see it as of yet, a reason to make a change. But I would just say stay tuned. And the regional perspective is a very insightful one. So I'll be glad to put that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And again, the regional transportation item is huge to try and connect the entire region. This might be a stepping stone for creating something that everyone can agree to. You know, having taxis go here and there and everywhere. But to your point, Councillor Bigger, certainly it's going to be at the cab driver's discretion as to whether he or she wants to drive to Quispamsis or back again or linger. So thank you. So it has been moved and seconded, I believe. Councillor Miller made the motion. Councillor, who seconded that? Deputy Mayor Schreier did. No, I don't see it here. Yeah.
Do we have the modified? Yes,
Has that, is it there? On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Item 10B, proposed bylaw number 064, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting flyer distributions in the town. Consideration of first and second reading. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I would move that first reading be given to proposed bylaw number 064, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting flyer distribution within the town.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier, and I'm going to turn on the question to Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did want to bring council's attention to the issues around distributing flyers into driveways. The bylaw that they passed in the city of St. John makes reference to if flyers are still in a driveway when the distributor comes for the next week, I guess, distribution, then they're not allowed to drop any more flyers. But then the next line in the St. John bylaw talks about the actual places where flyers can be distributed in the mailbox or the doorstep or a mail slot and that sort of thing. So I'd like to get council's feedback on what it is that they're looking for in this bylaw, because if you eliminate driveways from distribution, I would suspect that that will simply just eliminate all flyers in Quispamsis, because right now, as we all know, it's a pretty efficient delivery system in that they throw the flyers outside the windows of a slow-moving vehicle and they land in the driveway, and that's what causes a lot of the problems. But I also suspect that because there are advertisers who are paying a local business for the printing costs surrounding these advertisements and then the distribution, that they must see some value in that. So by eliminating the driveway drop, I think that's just going to end flyers completely. And if that's what council's wishes are, that's fine. But I did think it was important to point that out, that maybe between now and the next meeting within that month, that maybe we solicit some public feedback, because I suspect there are probably some folks who don't mind receiving the flyers. So there's sort of two schools of thought: not allow the flyers in the driveway, which probably will kill it, or allow flyers in the driveway, which is not in this draft bylaw. And then there would probably be the need for the no flyer sign to ensure that they're not distributed. So just something for council to perhaps ponder and to consider those options, specifically around driveways, as to whether we are trying to totally eliminate all flyer distribution in Quispamsis, or are we just trying to give people the opt-out that if they don't want them, then they are to erect the sign in the appropriate location, Your Worship.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to weigh in on Mr. Kennedy's comments. I think that the intention of the bylaw is to give people an opt-out, because if you have a sign saying you don't want flyers, then you don't want flyers, and if you don't have a sign, put them wherever you want. So that's kind of, I'm trying to simplify it, because again, you have the option of saying you don't want flyers anywhere, and in that way, to his point, if people want to still throw them in the driveway because people want the flyer, that's another option. But the question I actually had was under 4B. It's a B1 post. So basically, you can do a few things, but one is post a sign or notice in such form as may be provided by the council. Is the intention that we be giving out signs to residents, or 4B?
I'll go to Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that's in there just to afford people the opportunity, if they don't have a printer at home and don't want to go to a local printing company. If someone came to town hall, we would just basically print the sign fitting those parameters, just sort of in paper form. We wouldn't be erecting a sign or anything at their location.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. I'm going to go to Mr. Colburn, Development Officer.
Through you, Your Worship, just a comment. Thought that was discussed on this side was perhaps the reverse. Instead of opting out, you're opting in. Because if I don't want flyers, why should the onus be on me to actually put the sign up? Versus if you want the flyers, the onus should be on the person to put the sign up. If I don't want, if a resident don't want the flyers, why should you do anything? Versus the person who wants them, they indicate they do want flyers. Just a thought to reverse it.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. On the question for first reading, please vote now. Motion carried 5-2. The nays were Councillor Olson and Councillor Thompson. Item B, proposed bylaw number 064, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting flyer distribution within the town.
Excuse me, Your Worship, was there a second reading to the, or did you want me to wait and make a change for third and final? Or did you want just first reading?
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm still waiting for a little bit of feedback. We had some different opinions, the opt-in or the opt-out, and I appreciate Councillor Luck's comment about the driveways, and there was no sort of discussion or debate on that as to whether that's how we want to do it, because it is important to make that, and we don't have to do it now. We can give the month and get some public feedback and do second and third reading at the next meeting. But just, I think it is important to make that designation about driveways because there are other jurisdictions that don't allow the flyers to be dropped in the driveway. Even if you want the flyers, they have to go up closer to the house or in a mail slot. And I think that's maybe important to note in our public feedback over the next few weeks, just to see if people, what the feedback is on that, if this community is just happy to no longer have flyers, which I think would pretty much happen by osmosis if the driveways are not permitted, your worship. So first reading is fine for tonight, but if council wanted to discuss that a little more, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. On the question, we have Councillor Donovan, please.
Thank you. That's what I was going to ask, was how we were going to sort of gather this feedback from residents. Is it something that would be able to be posted on our Facebook page? Like, how do you, like, are you interested in it, or are you not interested? I think maybe that might reach the most amount of people.
Probably on our Facebook page. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to sort of zero in on a comment that Mr. Kennedy made, is that these flyers are still in existence, so there's a reason that they're there. And whether that's because the businesses are seeing a return on their investment, or whether it's because, people enjoy getting them, I don't know. But I think it would only be fair to go to the public and say, what are your feelings on this? So to Councillor Donovan's point, how can we create a community awareness about this? And, it's the old saying that so many people show up and sort of shape the policy, but try to make it as fair and diverse as we can.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a bit of background on why St. John did this, and actually just in terms of, because I guess what's been happening, I actually like getting flyers, so I want to continue to get the flyers. But again, a lot of people don't like them. And when they've tried to call numerous times, basically their requests have been like they go in one ear and out the other. And that's really I think the intent of why this bylaw came into existence in St. John. And talking to some residents in Quispamsis, this is their frustration, is the people that don't want the bylaw, or the bylaws, don't want the flyers, have already tried numerous times to call the distribution place that's distributing the flyers and say, take me off the list, please don't deliver them. And then the next week they get flyers in their driveway. So again, we don't want to control everything. I think it should be a simple bylaw that at least it holds the companies accountable, that when someone doesn't want the flyer, because I think to Mr. Kennedy's point and to Deputy Mayor Schreyer's point, there is some value, and I enjoy getting the flyers because, I get the virtual newspaper. I like seeing what the sales are and all that other stuff. But I think that there needs to be a mechanism in place to hold people accountable, people being the flyer distributors, when you ask them time and time again, please stop delivering flyers. They're ruining my snowblower. They're littering. I just basically get them when they're soggy and throw them out. I think there needs to be a mechanism in place, as simple as possible, to give those people an out, to be able to say, I've tried and no one's listening, so now I'm posting a little sign, and now at least they can be held accountable when they ignore my sign. And then that way it kind of still continues the economy and, all the other good things that happen with flyer distribution, but still gives people that are frustrated with the process a voice. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Worship. That makes perfect sense to me, and that's what we will do prior to second and third reading. We'll add driveways in there to stipulate that that is okay for folks who still want to receive the flyers. And then we will, go through the social media aspect that Councillor Donovan had mentioned as well, and see how that goes, Your Worship. One never knows when we dip into those social media waters.
Thank you. On the question, I guess we've already voted, and we're pushing the second and third reading until next meeting. All right, moving forward. Item 10C, review of zoning bylaw number 038, section 6S regarding fences. Request from Planning Advisory Committee. And okay, Councillor Olson. Oops.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move council give consideration to amending the zoning bylaw number 38 for the purposes of regulating permitted fence styles based on the zoning designation and refer to planning staff.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson, and I hit Councillor Donovan's button here, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I read this with interest because when I look at it and it says 6 requests for fences last year, I really don't think that we should get into this. Like, you know, that people to allow a fence, you know, now we're saying, and it's, the fence has got to look like this, or the fence has to be this, or the fence has to be that. We already have stipulations on how far away the fence has to be, how high the fence could be. Now we're saying, and perhaps you have to use only this material for this fence, depending where you want to put your fence. And financially, I think that could be hard on some people, because who knows what type of fencing they're going to come up with. I mean, and so I just think it's somewhere we don't need to be at this point. And so I would just leave it to the way it stands now on our fencing bylaw. I wouldn't change it. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm of the same opinion as Councillor Schreier. You know, I think the bylaw, you know, again, if it's your property and you have a certain taste, it doesn't matter who else likes it. You know, I mean, if it meets the criteria of all the other things in our bylaw, I don't think we should be getting into the nitty-gritty of saying, well, it needs to look this way, or it needs to be made out of this material, or, you know, I think that needs to be the decision of the homeowner, as long as it meets the other criteria. So again, I believe that was the intent, is that they were asking for us to give more details in the bylaw. So again, I'm against it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make sure, sorry, I read this a few times,
Yeah.
so where this is, right now we have 6 to go to PAC, and I've read one of the recent ones because it's in somebody's front yard, kind of because their house is turned and things like that. So I get that. So we're recommending that all those go to staff?
We'll go over to Mr.
Yeah.
Coburn to answer your question.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Miller. So what sort of generated this is it's an aside to the actual request that comes to the Planning Advisory Committee. What comes to Planning Advisory Committee for fence consideration is usually setback. There's always a lot of requests that they don't want to go 60 centimeters. They just want to put it on the property line to avoid this, 2 feet on one side, 2 feet on the other. Now you have this gap down between the property line and 2 fences. And then you get some that are fence height, maybe need to be higher and those types of things. So when that goes out to the public or the residents and looking at a variance, some of the comments that come back is the resident, the neighbor may not like the fence style. Some people are using deer fencing, and it may not be in the front or side yard, it's along the rear, and their rear property is wooded, so it serves its purpose. Yeah. So the PAC is looking at, do we need to start looking at regulating materials so there's more, I guess, guidance that we can make our decisions on. From a staff perspective, it's an enforcement thing that would be just, it would present some challenges. And the bylaw currently establishes the minimum requirement in that you can't use a material that's going to cause bodily harm, which is the purpose of a bylaw, to protect. From a planning perspective, when we look at other municipalities, some municipalities are actually getting out of the fencing regulations. Are basically saying this is a civil matter, right? Unless you go over a certain height or some general requirements, then the municipality, will get involved in it. But some municipalities are just moving away from it just for those reasons. We have, discussed it from a planning level. This is something that we would probably see in a subdivision covenants. It should be within a covenants restriction so that the neighborhood actually polices, if you will, the fence styles that are in that subdivision. So if you live out in a rural area, there's maybe no covenants, so you can use deer fencing and all those types of things. If you're living in, Queensberry, or you're living some other parts of the municipality, then the covenants can actually say you can only use board-on-board fence, or you can use chain link. That's where that, to me, would come into play. as across the municipality in terms of looking at materials based on the zones. There would be, obviously, I think we're getting into an area where enforcement would be a challenge, and then it could actually, has been referred to, all of a sudden your expense of your fence goes up and those types of things. So I think it's something that, from a planning perspective, we would like to see at a covenants level versus a bylaw level. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's what we're looking at, pulling it out of the bylaw level.
And so as PAC is looking to whether council is interested in considering amending the bylaw to provide those provisions in, and if not, then it's leaving status quo of what the bylaw currently has. Yep.
Okay. And a second question, I know we have 6 at PAC, but how many do we get through the town? Just for the fence, just for the planning? I just know because I had to fill all mine out, so.
Yes, there's usually some through PAC, but the Community Planning Act allows some variances to go through the development officer.
Yeah.
So, it may be in the order of a dozen or so a year. So
Okay.
we do communicate. Part of the process is you communicate with the property owners that are involved. If they say, yeah, we're fine with it, then it's issuing a permit. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn. Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to confirm, a nay vote on this motion is to retain the status quo. Thank you.
Vote always, a motion always has to be in the positive, so.
How very optimistic. How very glass.
On the question, it's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. Please vote now. Motion defeated, 0-7. Item 11A, new business, tender number 2023 TQ05-10, equipment rental, winter maintenance operation. Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move the recommendation of staff that the town award tender number 2023 TQ05-10 winter maintenance equipment rental contract for the 3-year term to industrial cold milling in accordance with the submitted tender.
It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question. Seeing there are no questions, please vote now.
No, it's not showing. She want me to vote for her?
Are you in favor? In favor. Motion carried 7-0. Item 11B, Executive Acres Subdivision Phase 9, PID 30333-264, request for council assent. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
I would move that council grant assent to the Executive Acres Phase 9 subdivision plan, subject to the execution of a standard development agreement, so that the plan can be stamped and signed by the town clerk and development officer for registration.
It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question. Seeing there are none, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. On to reports. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move we receive and file reports.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson to receive and file reports, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to bring attention to Report I, the letter sent to the Honourable Chris Austin, requesting that he consider making a legislative change to the Police Act. And I'm sure it wasn't the intent, but it is on letterhead signed by the mayor. And because we haven't discussed it on council, I'm actually not in agreement with, I think there are some great values in having term limits. So I just wanted the minutes to reflect that I'm not in agreement with the letter.
Thank you for that. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Worship. Just two quick comments. I want to thank the town for the letter sent to the minister requesting consideration for our Qplex, but also I wanted to point out the town of Quispamsis, the annual report I thought was very well done. So thank you very much for everybody that put in there. It was really well done. Very nice. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Miller. Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just point to the response letter that arrived from the Minister of Local Government and Local Governance Reform, the Honourable Minister Alam, in response to the concerns expressed by this council on behalf of our town related to the commission being established that can review and potentially override municipal bylaws by duly elected members of our council for our town. And I take umbrage at a couple of things that the minister says, and I won't get too much into the weeds on it, but I find that his response is, I don't find it particularly reassuring, and in fact, I find that it's contradictory in a couple of spots. There seems to be some sense that there are complaints. I take the point made by, perhaps it's a little unfair of me to sit here and criticize it when it's not being sort of put before everybody who might hear me say this, but of course people can reference the report and see it for themselves. I take the minister's point that there are other jurisdictions where this sort of thing exists, and so there's nothing new under the sun, as the Bible says. But I'm concerned that this is sort of a solution in search of a problem to a certain degree. This notion that there are certain bylaws, resolutions that duly elected councils would come to after some sober adjudication, considering the needs of the towns that, I'll just speak for our town, that we represent, and that there's some, it's this vague sort of assertion that perhaps a particular bylaw is deemed to not be in the greater public interest. And I find that to be very sort of nebulous and ambivalent. And I see, for example, that the minister writes, during the reform process, we made a commitment to establish an independent body that would review and make recommendations on matters affecting the administration and governance of local/regional entities. Well, a commitment to who, I would ask? To themselves? Like, I feel like we didn't ask for this. So what appetite was expressed or apparent for this sort of body to be set up? And anyway, I'm a little concerned when I read that the commissioner has the power to access a wide range of information from local governments, including access to confidential in-camera closed council deliberations. I mean, I know that sensitivity would guide these endeavors, I'm sure, and we're probably talking about things that happen out on the sort of extreme ends of the spectrum, not the mushy middle of how things get done and what happens. But anyway, I just wanted to go on record and say that I was very disappointed with the tone and the substance of this response. Again, I'll make mention of one other thing here. There are parameters, the letter says, created legislatively to help guide that interrelationship. An important example is the authority in the Community Planning Act for the minister, with the approval of cabinet, to quash a bylaw made under the act if satisfied that it is in the public interest to do so. These authorities have been effectively and responsibly administered over many years. I just don't understand, I guess, according to whose assertion or complaint, who decides that a local elected council isn't operating in the best interest of the public that we serve. I'm frankly, I'm a little insulted at the idea that that would be that would come under question. I certainly, I have no problem with the rulings, the decisions that we make on behalf of the town being before the public. And I mean, we of course are accountable to the voters that put us here. And I guess a bit of sober second thought is fine. But I worry that this is another example of a tendency that I see of centralizing power and sort of rendering us toothless. So anyway, I'll stop there, but I just felt I had to go on record and make mention that I was very disappointed with this response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger, and I will identify that the 52-page report on Bill 45 was penned by Minister Daniel Alain, the former minister, and he has been replaced by Minister Savoy. So I am not sure if you want to have us write a letter to Minister Savoy, but that's who it would be directed to at this point. So thank you. So we have on reports, on the question. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Business arising from Committee of the Whole, there is none. Councillor Olson. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, hoping everyone has a good rest of your week and that you find joy in the days to come. Thank you very much. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.